Um, okay, so hello everyone, welcome to University of Edinburgh Entrepreneur Society. My name is Joanna. I'm a third year Econ with Finance student at the University of Edinburgh, and I'm representing Edinburgh Entrepreneur Society as the events coordinator. Today, our topic is gender equality. It is with our great honor and pleasure that we have the four guests. They are Qiuyan Chen, Diana Chen, Bjorn Engelhardt, and Sophie Guerin with us. All of them are active members in gender equality and women's rights. So thank you all for joining us and welcome. Gender equality has long been a heated issue. So I firmly believe that today is the time that we act on gender equality, that we learn about what we can do and we try our best to support. So wherever you are in the world and whatever your current identity is, I do believe that there's always something that you can do to help promote gender equality and to make our world a more equal place. So for today's event, I'd like to start it with some self-introductions from our speakers, so we can get a brief idea of who you are and what you're doing now, and maybe your prospects about gender equality. And after that, we will have some design questions for you to discuss upon. And finally, we will allow some time for the live Q&A session where we collect questions from our audience. So please feel free to post your questions into the chat box alongside the meeting. Great, so shall we start from the first part now? Diana, would you please introduce yourself to us?
Sure, thank you very much, Joanna. And hello, everyone. My name is Diana, and I'm a senior student at Shanghai University of Finance and Economics. It is such an honor to be here today, and thank you very much for having me. So I would love to introduce myself by introducing my journey of promoting gender equality from 2017. So in that year, I joined Redefine International, which is a New York registered women empowerment NGO for North American women, established in Barnard College with members from all over the world. There, I organized 2 annual gender education summer camps. And in 2018, I established an online gender education platform in my school, which then registered under the Girl Up program of the United Nations Foundations and received a grant award. So this platform aims at spreading the knowledge of sex and gender in order to promote the mindset of diversity and inclusion on campus. So in 2019, I was selected as the national president of Qiuyan College, which is a joint school platform of Qiuyan China, and is one of the largest student-led women empowerment NGOs in China. So it aims to help female college students to break gender stereotypes, build confidence, and bravely pursue their goals by providing peer support, mentorship, and leadership training and opportunities. So to achieve that, we established local communities and circles inside Chinese universities, which also extensively cooperate with each other regionally and nationally. So as the national president, I led a volunteer team of more than 300 students and was responsible for all the tasks, including strategic planning, community management, operations, human capital management, public relations, and media. So in 2020, I was selected as the online volunteer of the Gender and Safeguards Unit of the United Nations Environment Program. For a month, I assessed the national implementation reports of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action and produced reports. So in the same year, which is very honored to be selected as the sole delegate, developed a policy recommendation paper submitted directly to the G20 leaders on the social and economic issues faced by women. So above is a very brief introduction of, I can say, just the starter of my journey to promote gender equality. And again, I'm very happy to be here today, and I look forward to the panel later. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Diana. So Qiuyan, would you please introduce us to you?
Yeah, and hello everyone. Can you hear me?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and I am Qiuyan Chen, and I am a Chinese LGBTQ activist. And I just went to London several years ago for studying, and then I found there are like not any organization or network focused on Chinese LGBT community. So that's why later I established Queer China UK, and we like through some event, community event or public event, we want to empower the Chinese speaking LGBT diaspora. And we also want to facilitate the connectivity between queer community in different countries. And our popular event is the LGBT tour in Mandarin and Cantonese in the British Museum, in the London City, also in the National Gallery, something like that. And recently we had a new program. It's called Transnational Chinese Queer Leadership Program. It's quite like we want to empower to make many Chinese people, they can like explore their potential. They can also be leader in different area. And before I went to London, I also quite active in China's LGBT movement. For example, I had initiated the anti-homophobic textbook campaign. And also I established the LGBT Youth Action Union. And in this period, as a litigant, I had pursued some lawsuit against the China's Ministry of Education 3 times, and also some like publishing house and over the homophobic textbook issues, because it's quite like common. Many university textbook, they would say like homosexual is a illness, is a disease, something like this. That's why I want to like rewrite those wrong textbook. So my activism experience focus on LGBT inclusive education, public education, and LGBT empowerment and women leadership. And I am very glad to be like invited for this event. And I am very happy to meet everyone here and discuss more about the gender equality issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Qiuyan. So Bjorn, it will be our honor to hear about your story.
Thanks, Joanna. So welcome from Australia. I'm normally based in Singapore, but I, like many of us on this call, I am stuck in a country which I normally don't live in because of COVID. And thankfully, it's not too bad being stuck on the northern part of Australia and the warm weather. So, I guess I would say my passion for gender equality was driven by me being a father of a teenage daughter. I have a son and a daughter, and I watched my daughter not have the same opportunities, even in a country where we lived in Singapore or Australia, as my son did. And it was somewhat unconscious, just the realization that women struggled, particularly younger girls struggled, that you naturally assume they'll go and take one type of career and the boys will go and take another career. And then about 5 years ago, I hired this very passionate woman to join my team at a technology company. And by the way, I've been working for American tech companies for about 25 years. And Uma says to me, she says, I need to have a little bit of extra time during work hours to take on my passion of driving gender equality. I'm a founder of He for She and a founder of Lean in Singapore. I said, sure. I didn't know what I was saying sure to. I kind of said, sounds good. Yeah, sounds fair enough. Go and do that. And then one day she puts her head over the partition and she says, Bjorn, would you help co-found He for She? I said, yeah, I don't know. I'm just busy at the moment, but sure, anything, Uma, I'll be happy to do it. Little did I know what I was getting myself into, but at the same time, I'm so incredibly happy that I got involved in this, both from a personal journey of what it opens up, the privileged life that I've lived as a male, and particularly a white male in a lot of the Asian countries and around the world. But secondly, just the ability, I think, for me to help in a small way, a very small way, to bring awareness around unconscious bias, gender equality, etc. There was 5 of us. We're all execs at tech companies based in Singapore, and we just spent our life mostly talking from the heart about and some structured comments around unconscious bias, how just understanding those micro moments, what they could do to change the opportunity for women. And so that's really my background, driven by personal desires, and to make sure my daughter has the same opportunities as my son, but also, a professional and an intellectual awareness that the world isn't even, and there are even the smaller steps can make some big changes.
Yeah, thank you. We do believe in the same thing as you.
Yep.
And Sophie, maybe we can know something about you, please.
Sure. Joanna, can you hear me all right? I'm having a little internet issue.
Yeah, we can hear you clearly.
All right. Well, just folks, make a little wave if you have any trouble hearing me, and I'll try to switch my internet. And Bjorn, I have to say, I'm glad that we both have had the pleasure of getting to work with Uma, fantastic individual. So my name is Sophie Guerin. I lead diversity and inclusion at Johnson & Johnson, representing the Asia Pacific region. So my job is really to think about how do I take a global diversity and inclusion strategy for a Western multinational organization and try to provide coaching, guidance, context to really localize that for the environments in which we operate, both for our employees so that it's relevant to them, but also for our customers, patients, nurses, and doctors, right? So there's a huge stakeholder group that our strategy has to work for, and it has to solve the challenges for. And I like that. I like problem solving. I like complex problems. I like problems that aren't always easy to kind of figure out, how do you solve this? And is it going to be possible in our lifetime? I certainly hope so. But I like the challenge. And that just is what I wake up every morning really excited about the work that I get to do, and excited about, supporting those initiatives that are driving the results that we want to see in terms of greater equity. And partnering with community groups and other stakeholders in the markets to see how we can collectively drive action. My passion in this space, I think, really came very early on. I was raised by a single mom who was working in, I grew up in Asia in rural communities, primarily looking at safe birthing practices. So for women, maternal mortality rates is a big indicator of economic progress in most countries. And so very early on, I was really exposed to what are the issues that women were facing, and healthcare inequalities, and what that kind of started for early in life. As I became an adult, and I moved to Asia when I was about 19, and was in China in the early 2000s, and I really began to understand the challenges that women faced in the workplace in a really different way. I was very lucky that my educational upbringing had been fairly equitable. I went to a girls' school, so I didn't really notice that there was a big difference in terms of education. But when I became into the business world, all of a sudden I realized, oh my goodness, this is not a level playing field. And it was really hard to adapt to. And so I realized that at the time, there wasn't really a great network for me to lean on to kind of get some coaching or advice or networking. And so I really ended up having to create it myself because there weren't a lot of resources at the time. And so that's really kind of what spurred me to kind of get involved in work to help other women, because I realized it was only through women kind of coming together and again, driving collective action, were we going to be able to build those networks that were essential, that we're going to be able to advocate for one another, to be able to learn from one another. And then eventually that moved from beyond a peer group to women who were more senior than I was, and then eventually women who were more junior than I was. So people at different stages of their career, and what could we learn from each other? And then to Bjorn's point, this whole concept around male allyship really became something that I realized that it's not just an issue for women by women, but this is really about a societal issue. And the only way that we can really make change is when everybody's got quote unquote skin in the game, right? So everybody sees how gender equity benefits them. And therefore, what are we going to do to change the culture now, but then also ensure that that is sustainable and continues to improve for the generations that come after us, right? So that's what's got me interested in it. And I'm just so delighted and grateful to be here with you today and to have this a very important conversation.
Yeah, thank you. So thank you all for your introductions, and it's really our honor to know a little bit about you. So now we'd love to move on to learn a bit more about gender equality, about the initiatives around the globe, and even about what we students and recent graduates can do at the moment. So the first question that I would like to bring to the board is, would you please name an initiative or maybe an organization that is focusing on gender equality that you appreciate the best? Just anyone would like to start.
Okay. Here, Joanna, why don't I go ahead and kick us off? We can go back the other direction. So I had two. This is wonderful because I was like, oh goodness, I never get asked specifically about one organization. So I have to say I'm cheating, Joanna. I'm choosing two. So there's two things. One is that I tried to think. There's so many wonderful initiatives and programs. Lean In, He for She. All of these are fantastic programs. I'll leave that to Bjorn to maybe talk about some of that. But two in particular that stand out for me. One is called iRelaunch, and there's something that individuals may encounter in their career is that when women choose to, if women choose to have a family, one of the things that you often see in that professional trajectory is they may drop out of the workforce or they may step back from the workforce. And unfortunately, that happens at the peak kind of career growth trajectory of one's professional development. So usually that's going to happen maybe in your late 20s, early 30s, mid 30s, late 30s, which is really when your career starts to take off. And so that can really set women back when it comes to their advancement into senior leadership roles, if that's something that they want to do. Now, that isn't necessarily affecting all women, but it affects a large number of women, and especially in cultures where you have traditional gender norms. This is really reinforced and amplified. So iRelaunch plays in a really important role in identifying women who've been out of the workforce for a minimum of 2 years, and then provides hands-on outreach, coaching, and development through kind of a paid internship program that gets women back into the workforce and acclimatized. And actually, one of the things that we find that women who go through this program um, actually ended up working harder, produce stronger results because they are really want to get back into that workforce. They've been out, but they want to get back in. That being said, when you are out of the workforce for several years, you might need a little bit of extra support with onboarding because you haven't been in that kind of routine. So iRelaunch is really important, and they operate globally. But there are many other similar organizations that do that kind of work. The other organization I wanted to mention, and it is a disclaimer, I did used to work for this organization, but I think if we're really going to make traction on the issue of gender equity, particularly the advancement of women into senior leadership, we have to really focus on what's kind of the outcome of that, right? Which is economic inequality, right? So when women aren't advancing into senior leaderships or they don't have the opportunities, what you're going to see is broader economic disenfranchisement of women, which really limits their voice at the table. Because if you have economic resources, you are going to have a seat at the table. So I really like We Connect because actually what it does is that it connects women business owners to global supply chains. And so it puts money in the hands of women business leaders, right? And it also ensures that they have robust governance systems, that they can make independent financial decisions, and that they own and manage their company legally. Because often, especially in developing communities, they're family-owned enterprises, right? But We Connect ensures that women legally own and control and hold those financial resources, which is so important for broader economic equity, which is really a game changer when it comes to gender equity. So those are my two.
Yeah, I firmly believe that these two initiatives are really important in helping women. Like you mentioned that economic inequality is even worse than other inequalities. So it is true for families and for workforce, like both families and workforce. So if women don't have financial independence in family, they won't have a voice. And if they are leaders in workforce, but they don't have the financial independency, they're still not having a voice. So yeah, that's really important. Thank you.
Yeah,
Qiuyan, please.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and before I mention one campaigns or initiative, I want to introduce a little bit about the organization in China, because there are a few or a lot of feminists and LGBT grassroots organizations across the China. But however, many LGBT is the term, it cannot be mentioned in many official documents or in the public sphere. So many organizations, they cannot register as a charity. Some of them, they would register as a social enterprise or company, but they cannot use LGBT in some official document, in some like registration document. So based on this situation, they don't have a legal identity. They also at the same time suffer the suppression from the government, something like that. In such case, I think many LGBT organizations, they had done a lot of great work. So I cannot list which is the best or which is the second. I think they all do a lot of great work based on many like pressure. And if I need to introduce one, I want to introduce the one initiative I like set up in 2015. It's called Anti-Homophobic Textbook Initiative. As I previously mentioned, currently there are many university textbooks and student use across all the university. They all say homosexual is a illness. They also say bisexual is also like illness. You have to be cured. You have to be like go to some conversion therapy in the hospital, something like that. It all mentioned in the university. So at that time, I feel as a student, I'm quite angry and I want to do something to rewrite those wrong textbooks. That's why I like initiate this campaign, textbook campaign. We are not just me. I like recruit many students. They also want to do something. So it's kind of the activist left action network. We want to fighting for gender equality in the area of education in and beyond the homophobic textbook. And in our growth, we would like practice all kinds of grassroots campaign strategy, like lobbying, like the online mobilization, media advocacy, and research, and also some performing activism industry in front of the like educational department, something like that. And currently, we successful push more than, I think it's around maybe 1,000 educator, some education worker, they would like support gender equality publicly. I would like ask them to like take a picture to show they are supporting. And we also push or influence more than 100 students, they become advocates. They are not just like listen, lecture, or just like studying. We want to like push them can be like activists. And yeah, I can share some link about our like activism report in the like chat box. And that's one initiative I want to like share with you.
Yeah, thank you. So I firmly believe that there are so many things that we can improve, especially in the Chinese environment. So I'd like to really thank you for doing so much, and also thank you to all the other organizations for trying to promote gender equality and LGBT's rights. Great, thank you. So maybe Bjorn, would you like to share something with us?
Sure. Do you know how hard it is for your average alpha male like me who wants to jump in and answer when you first answered, who wants to talk? And, you know, and it is the natural reaction in most meeting rooms, particularly in the business environment, that the men want to speak first and then the women can maybe have a few minutes at the end. And I think that, why am I saying that is because I think one of the initiatives that I've been involved in is He for She. And it has been, as I said, a great learning journey for myself. But if I talk to my own colleagues, friends, or associates who are involved in that, I think what we try to do through He for She is not to beat up men and say you're bad, you're unfair, you treat women badly, etc., but to recognize the reality of the science and the history behind unconscious bias, that we're all formed and we've all created with some level of bias, whether it's our cultural backgrounds, whether it's our professional careers, whether it's just the reality that we watch TV shows or something. And these biases tend to form, I guess, certain patterns of behavior that most of us don't recognize. And one of the things that we've spent a lot of time saying is unconscious bias isn't something that we got to try and stamp out per se, because you can't sometimes change that. What we do have to realize that it exists and then realize how we deal with that, either that we've been involved in ourselves or that somebody else is maybe exhibiting an unconscious bias, and then use that as a way of changing the scenario or the scene that's happening. I'll give you a great example. So, Sophie, I'm glad you know Uma because she's picked me up on it a few times. And I was in a meeting, and typical, I guess, gender balance or imbalance of one professional woman, one administrative woman, and 10 men. And in that environment, I'm asking for feedback. And Uma, who I now, whenever she says something, I stop, I listen very carefully, but I said, yeah, that's great. Now, Alistair, what did you think? And I moved straight on to somebody else and discounted everything that she said. Now, she didn't say anything in that meeting. I kind of wish she had have. But she pulled me up afterwards, said, you know, you ignored everything I said. And then you just gave the credit to somebody else for that idea. And I said, no, I didn't. And that's where it got to me, that this whole unconscious bias is just such a pervasive area, that just the fact that, you know, if we can make small little steps of awareness around that, and that's what we're trying to do in he for she. And I think what's powerful with he for she is that it's men. It's you know, none of us are role models of perfection when it comes to gender equality. Each of us are guys who probably continue to make, you know, series of unconscious bias statements, actions, etc. But we believe we can make progress and change around that. And I think that's what's powerful. That's what the feedback that we get from the people we work with is saying, hey, it's really refreshing to hear somebody who's not trained professionally to deliver this. They're not doing it for a job. They're doing it out of a passion and out of a desire to make a small difference. And so, you know, I think you know, there are two sides to this equation. Women definitely lean in, should be there to support each other, and at the same time, men, you know, helping each other, but men helping women to fulfill their career dreams is a big part of it as well. So I'm kind of sad that I've been locked away. I'm glad that we've had the opportunity to do this virtually, and you know, you're probably going to reignite my passion to get a little bit more active again on the other end of a Zoom call.
Yeah, thank you very much. I quite agree that in order to reach gender equality, it's not just women's job. So we need our male counterparts to really participate in this initiative and to try to help us. And yeah, that's the way to finally get to gender equality and all kinds of equality. Thank you. So Diana, would you like to share something with us?
Sure. So first of all, please allow me to say that I am very much inspired by all the organizations that the previous guests have mentioned, and I will definitely look them up. And actually, I just read the introduction of Qiuyan-Queer China UK, and wow, that is amazing. Thank you very much for your contributions. And the organization I would love to mention is, or I should say the initiative I would like to mention is the Growth 20 Global Summit, where delegates from the G20 countries and regions and also some other guest countries and regions were selected together to develop a policy recommendation communique that was submitted directly to the G20 leaders. So this initiative was really inspiring to me, mainly because of two reasons. First of all, it reminds me of how important it is to let not only women, but also young women to be involved in the decision-making processes. I don't know how much impact we actually made, of course, but I am already very glad and very happy to know that at least our voice reached the senior leaders of countries. And growing up in China as a student, actually this kind of opportunities is really rare. So this initiative actually inspired me that in the future, I will also like to be a kind of well, I would also like to contribute in something like this to link the Chinese women with the ones who will have a say in those important issues to solve social problems. So this is one key takeaway from this initiative for me. And secondly, this initiative actually gathers a very diverse pool of youth actions that contribute to gender equality. So some of the delegates, and they are all at my age, who are around 20 to 25. So some of them founded NGOs that are helping with female entrepreneurs, menstruation education, etc. And some of the delegates are delivering their voices through the youth congress of their countries to the senior leaders. And some of them are also actively advocating through United Nations initiatives. So these are all valuable assets to me because they all keep me inspired and encouraged all the time to remind me that whoever I am and wherever I am, I can be of help to this cause, and I will definitely contribute more in the future, even though I may be just an entry level in the workplace. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think that it's really important that we can get young people, especially young girls, to participate in like really important initiatives. So we can let them know that their voice are heard. Yeah, that's really important. Thank you very much. So I think we can now move on to the second question. So are you satisfied with the current situation of gender equality in your country? Or maybe more specifically in the organization or the company that you're working with, like the working environment? If yes, what do you think is the best part? And if no, what do you think they can improve? Just anyone would like to share anything can just pop in.
I think, you go first.
Oh, thank you. I was going to say, I'm, as I said, I'm living in Australia, and Australia is going through the most amazing case study of women's rights and treatment of women in politics and the Prime Minister of Australia has been, for the last 1 month, is facing huge criticism for how women are treated, how the government is treating women, how society looks at it. And it's actually very interesting, but it's also refreshing to see how it's not just being pushed under the carpet and treated as, oh, it's a short-term issue. It started with one woman who was allegedly raped inside Parliament House, and has expanded into national marches of the treatment for women, the opportunities for women. And so I think it's, being here in Australia and having grown up in Australia from when I was about 8 years old, and seen that really the culture hasn't changed. And this may be the beginning of a significant change in the country, that it's really becoming a topic and an agenda that is continuing to stay mainstream, not just a 1 or 2 days or 1 week news fest. So I definitely, as a general statement, I don't believe we're anywhere near close to equality. I think we have a long way to go. The statistics that we saw through Lean In and He for She, that if we use the current rate of gender equality or progress on gender equality, it'll be 200 years before we reach true equality. And I think that's criminal. And that's sad. It's not just criminal, it's sad that to think that the women in this group, our daughters, our sisters, our friends, women friends, will not have, in our lifetime, will not see that. And I think we have to double down on the initiatives to try and change that. Even within my own organization, you asked about ours. I run the Asia Pacific region. I'm not happy where we're at. We've instituted some hiring changes. I'm not going to mandate a quota. I don't believe in quotas, but I'm going to mandate that the candidate pool is 50% women and 50% male, at least 50% women, because if we don't get women into the candidate pool, we'll continue to perpetuate this bias out there. And I think the statistics say that if you have 1 out of 4 women, people would say it's a 25% chance. No, it's 18% chance of that woman getting the job. If you have 2, it's not 50% chance, it's less than 40% chance. And even with 3 women, it's still less than 73, 1 in 4 chance. It's about 60% chance. And so it's always stacked against the women. But the one thing we can do is to at least fill the candidate pool. And that's a small initiative that we're taking in our team. What we need to do is project ourselves, but also project to women that it's okay to get into certain industries. Technical roles is not a male dominated. I think women have every bit of the competencies and skills and capabilities to do a lot of those technical roles. However, it just tends to be dominated by men. And so I think there's a education for women on the opportunities, and there are some initiatives, very specific initiatives that we're continuing to take as well. But I'm as I said, I think we have a long way to go.
Yeah, thank you very much.
I quite agree. It's a very, very long way to go in many countries, in many areas. And at first, I also want to share a little bit background. It's like in China, we don't have like any law to protect LGBT's right, and also there are not any law like mention LGBT. So if like you suffer from some discrimination or unfair treatment, in the area of education, at home, or in the workplace, there is not any protection. And as for the women's protection, I think maybe Diana may also knows, and we had the China's anti-domestic violence law. And even though we had the law to protect women in their house, actually in practice, many police officers, they don't have this like gender awareness. Even though some women, they suffer from domestic violence, they like come to police station, ask for help. But those police officers, they just think, oh, they just think it's a minor quarrel between the couple. So they don't take very like serious. So therefore, I think China is also very far away from like achieving gender equality, and both in terms of legal protection and public awareness. And if for how to like do best or improve, I think when we handle or when we talk about gender equality, we cannot ignore other issues. It means when we like had to address multiple issues like gender inequality, LGBT discrimination, racism, something like that, and the equal work can be like truly or complete realized. And for example, I want to like make more specific, like for example, for me, and I also can see the intersection identity in myself. And I'm from, like, for example, I'm from rural area. I also like as a lesbian, as a woman, as a doctor, I can see I suffer from gender inequalities by different level. And when I was little, my parents, they would like put many pressure on me. They would think, and I had to like go to the workplace to earn money as soon as possible, to earn money to support my younger brother's education, to support my family, to build a house and like buy a car, something like that. This is quite common for many women, especially from disadvantaged background. Their family would like push them, expect them to go to find a job as soon as possible. And also as a lesbian, they would like just think, because after, even though they think I don't have to go to university, but I like study very hard. I can like get a scholarship and find part-time job to support myself, and also I get like scholarship to come to UK studying. So that's the one method. You have to like work very hard, studying very hard to like get financially independently. And as a lesbian, they also think maybe because I get a higher education, that's why I become a lesbian, something like that. They had like many misunderstanding. So that's why I think if we want to solve the gender equality, we want to achieve gender equality, we have to also mention or also consider other issues like class inequality, gender bias, LGBT rights, and also the resource inequality and race, something like that. Yeah, that's one I think we had to pay more attention when we like talk about the gender.
Yeah, thank you very much.
If I could just build off of what Qiuyan has said, I think Qiuyan, you raise a really important point around governance. That's one of the challenges that I think we, my role's covering Asia Pacific, so I'm just going to talk about that. I think part of the reason or the challenges that we have around making progress is that there just really isn't enough governance that's in place in this part of the world around putting some policies and some regulations around the advancement of women. So there's if you think about Australia, for example, they have put that on. There is a lot of work that's done around pay equity, the Gender Equality Commission. In Hong Kong, the Hang Seng Index has now said that if you want to go have your IPO, you have to have a gender diversity plan. That being said, when you look at the representation of women on boards in Hong Kong, it's still only 13.7%. So that governance has to be backed up with teeth, right? You look at things around, for example, around disability, right? A lot of countries actually, I'm not sure if people are aware of this, actually have guidelines around disability hiring. China has it, for example. But there really isn't a lot of teeth behind it. And so as a result, you don't see a huge effort around kind of compliance around that, as well as that driving policies, programs, and initiatives. So I think there's a couple of things. I think, and as a result, then companies will often then build their own initiatives and programs to kind of complement what they're doing at a global level and make sure that that's brought out. But I think that for companies that don't have that, it really then limits their incentive to why should I do this, right? And it's part of a journey for a company when it comes to diversity and inclusion. Usually you start with risk and reputation, so that also includes compliance. Then you move to how do I drive better performance, and then finally, how do I actually, engage with the external world more successfully, right? And so those are kind of the stages. But I think, Qiuyan, you've hit this idea around governance, which is really core for making progress. I would think one thing I will call out around Bjorn is, interestingly enough, depending on, I know this is your kind of a group that will be moving into that kind of professional space. Depending on the sector that you go into, you will find a very different landscape. I'm now currently in the healthcare space, which has 47% female representation globally. It's 46% in management. Whereas if you look at technology, it's very, very different, right? And that's not necessarily, I think, to Bjorn's point, it's not a criticism of technology necessarily. It's more around how have the underlying systems kind of helped to promote that inequality. And that starts really, really young in our educational systems, right? There's research out there done by UNESCO that shows that boys and girls perform equally and participate equally in STEM until they hit puberty. And then there's all these contributing factors that include teachers, textbooks. To Qiuyan's point, it's really important we look at textbooks, the culture, and then policies that all of a sudden contribute to the decline of girls in STEM. And then as a result, here we are, a couple of decades later, and you see an underrepresentation of women. In healthcare, it's a little different, but I think that's something to keep in mind as you enter into the workforce. Depending on your industry, you're going to have there will be a different landscape.
Yeah, thank you very much. So Diana, please.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So I would really like to echo to what the previous speakers have mentioned, and especially in reply to what Sophie has mentioned about the governance of companies. And I know that there has been increasing attention on ESG reporting, which actually pushed some of the companies to invest in social responsibility because they need to comply. They have compliance concern on those matters. However, I do realize that one of the major problems of this kind of reporting is that they focus too much on the quantitative results. They focus too much on like how much money they invest to the society, and like for example, how many events they held regarding, for example, employee education and, for example, gender equality education. This kind of focus that has a very strong lean to the quantitative result is that it is very hard to decide and very hard to analyze how much true impact that this kind of efforts create. So I think maybe in the future, me also personally, I am currently working on a project about ESG reporting to see how, if there is a better framework to actually decide and analyze the impact of those companies' ESG results. I think this is also a very interesting topic, and I really look forward, if anyone here is interested, maybe we can communicate on this topic maybe later after this panel. So besides what I would like to echo with the previous content, I would also like to introduce some situation regarding gender equality status in the Chinese universities. So I would like to share some facts because I will not actually directly respond to the satisfactory level. So the first fact is that there is a lack of infrastructure to support gender equality in many universities in China. So on the one hand, very few universities in China have systematic and general education to all students and faculty on sex and gender, including the procedures of how the schools will deal with sexual violation cases. On the other hand, many few schools have transparent information sharing on dealing with sexual violation cases. Although many researches show that the sexual violation cases widely existed on campus in China. So this is the first fact I would love to share. And the second fact is that many gender equality movements by students have been suppressed or prohibited by schools. So in 2018, I think Qiuyan would know that the play Vagina Monologues, which have been on show for a consecutive 13 years by Fudan University, was called off by the school because of the force majeure, the so-called force majeure. And in 2020, a student movement in my university to launch the shared menstrual products facilities in school restrooms was also terminated by school due to the so-called sensitivity concern. So these are two facts I would love to share, and of course, what we can conclude that there is also a very long way to go for the Chinese universities to improve gender equality. But actually, I would say that this is more of a matter of the government standing point and the execution of gender equality policies, as Qiuyan has mentioned. But I think no matter what, we students should never stop trying to raise our voices and do whatever we can. Yeah, I think that is very important, that we, no matter what, we should try. So like I have raised 2 applications on establishing a gender equality club in my school, although both failed due to sensitivity concern. But I think if I can redo the action, I would definitely choose to apply again. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Diana. So we are moving to the last about 10 minutes of the session. So audience, please feel free to post your questions into the chat box. And at the same time, I'd like to bring to the board the last question. So we've all mentioned that there is still a long way to go before we really achieve gender equality. So what do you think are the biggest challenges in driving those gender equality, or maybe more broadly, diversity and inclusion? This can be about like, we are having a difficult time adding that into the textbooks in education. It can also be that we are facing some government suppressing us not to do that, like what mentioned by Diana just now. So yeah, just what are the biggest challenges that you think we are facing? Just anyone would like to pop into the chat, just feel free to do so.
Yeah, I think for my view, I think the biggest challenge maybe the media censorship. I chose this one. If many media, they can like report some, we can say, sensitive topic, and that's why we cannot get enough visibility in the media representation. I think it's quite important. I know the like suppression or oppression is happening around the world, not just China. But I think the one important point is whether we can speak up physically or online. I think it's quite important, because only by we can speaking up freely. That's why we can connect each other. We can know each other. I think people's power is incredible, and it should be like solitary and can be seen. I think it's very, very important. So that's why I want to point out the media censorship.
Yeah, I quite agree with you. Any other challenges that you think we are facing, or other speakers?
Hi, Joanna. I'm happy to take it on. I can speak about, I mean, I think Qiuyan and Diana, you both raised some really important points there. Maybe I can talk about what I think the challenges are in the private sector around advancing this. I think the prominence and the issue of diversity and inclusion issues has really steadily been growing. I think for most Western multinational organizations, and I would say even in Asia, this as a topic really started to enter the corporate landscape probably in 2005 to 2007. There was really companies started to come together and figure out, okay, well, how do we have this conversation in Asia? What does that look like? What are kind of some benchmarks? What do we need in order to make progress? And so there was this kind of initial coming together. It was about 10 companies. And today it's much more robust. There's a lot more investment that's happened, but I think it's something that still needs to get traction at the top, right? An organization's culture is really defined by its senior leadership. And we see more and more CEOs who make that commitment and who drive that. But it's more than words. It really is about accountability, right? And for that change to take place, I think that whole piece around leadership accountability on making progress on diversity and inclusion is really important. And so, Bjorn, to your point around, are we looking at diverse slates, diverse interview panels, making sure that that is something that we're holding leaderships accountable to? Is it looking at, how are we making progress year on year? And then looking at what are the right carrot and stick models to hold people accountable. I think like any other area of one's business, diversity and inclusion has to have rigor in it, and there has to be teeth in it. It's not just about numbers for numbers' sake. It has to be linked to the core business, value proposition of the organization. We know that diverse and inclusive organizations perform better. So with that foundation, knowledge, and understanding, particularly as we seek to recover from COVID, how is diversity and inclusion baked into our business models, baked into our business strategy, and how are we driving accountability on that? That discipline and rigor that we have to any other part of our business has to be how we approach D&I. Unfortunately, we still see in many different organizations, and is that I think we're moving in that direction, but I still think that it's just not there yet. I think that as you start to see more also public accountability as well, I think Black Lives Matter has done a lot of that globally, which is holding companies more accountable. Media as well as social media has done that. Stakeholders, shareholders, there's a whole bunch of different factors. And then just employees in general are really requiring more rigor and discipline from companies around this. So I think we're going to continue to see positive progress, but unless we treat it like any other element of our business, and that have that rigor on that, progress will still be incremental.
Yeah, thank you very much. Anyone else would like to share something on challenges?
I'm waiting for Diana. No, look, I think just to, I think I support what exactly what Sophie said there. I think for me, what I see is that there has to be an acceptance of the reality of the extent of the issue. I think we all like to say intellectually we understand it. Yes, okay, well, it'll be okay. We'll fix it. But of the impact, I know, and it may be both an age group. I'm probably the oldest person here by 50% or 100% over everybody else. But fortunately, unfortunately, it's my age group that is the CEO of a lot of companies and the leadership of a lot of organizations that the students who are listening into this or watching this later will be wanting to join. And I think too many of my own peers, and I'm somewhat ashamed, but also inspired to try and make some more change in my own peer group, that we have to understand the size of the issue, the extent of the problem, and the complexity to fix it. It isn't a matter of a couple of training courses. Hey, I've done my inclusion training course this year. Tick, I'm good. I've been vaccinated for inclusion. Playing on Corona at the moment. It is an ongoing journey, learning experience. Make mistakes. Be willing to accept you made mistakes, as we would in an organization. No different from a science or software development, that you make mistakes and you have a bug, you call it out and you fix it again. And I think that type of similar iterative process with the same level of focus as you would, as Sophie said, on any other part of the business is what's required, I think.
Yeah, thank you very much. So we just got a question from the audience, from Harrison. So Harrison's interested in how we can better encourage different genders to organically apply to the roles. So based on his experiences, actually there are only 30% that are female applying to the roles. So yeah, just how do we encourage them to do so?
Can I just jump in on that one, because I love Harrison's question. I actually just watched this fantastic training video on LinkedIn Learning around male allyship. And there's a statistic out there that shows that women traditionally don't apply for a role until they meet something like 80% of the criteria, and then they'll apply. And like men, like if they reach like 10%, and they're like, yeah, sure, I'll put it in there. And so then, the belief has long been that women don't lack the confidence. Well, actually, research shows that women don't like to break the rules. So if the job description says these are the requirements, they will not apply because they don't want to waste people's time and they don't want to break the unspoken rules of the process by not applying. And so one of the recommendations in this training is that you move more of the requirements into things like desired additional qualifications that you may want, but optional, or leaving those off entirely, right? So that you kind of put in more flexibility into the role and the job description. In addition, there's some research from Google that shows that when you have in a job description kind of the summary of the role, if it's over 54 words, actually the women's the drop-off rate for female 50-50 application in women starts to drop significantly. It's like by double digits. So that's really kind of some interesting little data points that may be helpful for you as you kind of think about that. But that's also where the important role of sponsorship and being and tapping women on the shoulder and say, hey, there's an opportunity here. I really think that you should throw your hat on the ring. And that simple behavior can really make a huge difference. And so it might require a little being proactive in your development of talent and encouraging women to apply. It doesn't mean that women don't want to. It's just that for a whole host of different reasons, they may have been either socially conditioned not to do that because you don't want to break the rules, and that's something that socially we expect women to do. And then these other things that they're finding in Google and other organizations that are finding these really interesting data points and statistics that show about individual behavior and decision making. So, Harrison, if there are women that you would like to encourage to apply, tap women on the shoulder, reach out to networks of your peers, encourage your peers to refer other women. Doesn't mean they don't want to, they do. But it's also the onus is on us as leaders is to make sure that we are creating an environment where diverse talent is actively welcomed and invited to apply.
Yeah. So, Sophie, there was this brilliant online service, which just, as you said, to the words, even the words used in there. And I had one gentleman who worked for me. He was very action orientated. You have to be aggressive. You have to drive hard, fast moving, all of those types of words. And we ran it through this service. It was in beta stage, and it said it's 50% likely to attract a diverse gender pool. So my HR business partner and I sat down with this individual and we reworded it and over it. And we got to 94%, what this one predicted. And as you looked at the candidates applying, you go, bingo, it works. It was this, it's not always as simple, but in this case, it was the words that you use and describe what's expected out of that role as well.
Yeah, actually, from my perspective, when I see a job description saying that, yeah, you need to be like fast moving, you need to be like motivated, these strong words, I sometimes feel that I'm really afraid of that. I don't know if I can really do a great job. So sometimes I will hesitate if I should apply or not. That's true for me, at least. Yeah.
Go for it.
So,
do it.
Thank you. We just have another question from Thomas. Thomas is interested in how we can increase the male-female balance in some industries, for example, the technology industry that you mentioned before. So what can we do from the earliest point possible?
So this research that I cited, it's a kind of a dated paper. It's from 2015, but it's really comprehensive, and it looks at emerging markets in Asia, and it looked at 4 key factors that affect the participation rate of girls in STEM starting at puberty. So as I mentioned, you see equal performance, equal representation, and engagement in these subjects. At 13, all of a sudden, cultural pressures start to change. And Qiuyan, to your point, what starts to happen is that you see boys' names are introduced in examples and textbooks around hard science. So things like science and engineering and mathematics, they use boys are the example. The other thing is that's where you start to see the behavior of teachers change. So teachers will actively encourage boys to participate and maybe dismiss girls. You also start to see cultural and gender norms, right? So girls are now starting to hit puberty at this age. And so you're starting to see the pressure around traditional gender roles. And then finally, there's a issue around governance. So there aren't necessarily a lot of policies in place that encourage the equal representation or the participation of girls to pursue education in STEM fields. And so starting at that early age is why it's so important that interventions are made early on, because otherwise, when you're starting to look at women who've completed education, at that point, you've already just missed out on such a great potential talent pool, right? Because they're no longer there. And so then you've just got every company just fighting over a very, 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 very small talent pool. So it has to start earlier if we're really going to move the needle.
Yeah, I quite agree with you. If we are educated about gender equality at earlier age, there will be more gender equality in the future. Yeah. So anyone would like to share something on this question also? Okay, so I think we just reached 1 hour, and apologies, we just run like out of 1 hour for like 5 minutes. So this will be a wrap for our event today. So thank you to all the speakers and audience for joining us. And have a nice day. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. See you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.